Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the Alton Board of Selectmen's meeting, May 11th, 2020, to order at 6 p.m. This time, I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence. Mr. Lorishell, if you can lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get started on the agenda, approval of the agenda, I'd like to make an announcement. Until further notice, to keep our members and staff safe and comply with RSA 91-A, the state of emergency and governor's orders, restrictions on public gatherings, the town of Alton is moving from in-person meetings to remote audio participation meetings. To remotely attend the meeting, audio only, visit our website, www.alton.nh.gov, for telephone and access to remote access instructions. Listen, meet news and announcements on the home page or telephone the Selectmen's office at 603-875-2113 or 603-875-0229 between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. for the dial-in code and meeting ID for each Selectmen's meeting. There continues to be no public input at this time. If you wish to have something read into the record, please call the Selectmen's office at 875-2113 or email the Selectmen at selectmen@alton.nh.gov or mail a letter to the Board of Selectmen at P.O. Box 659, Alton, New Hampshire 03809. Your comments and questions or concerns will be read at the next available meeting and answered at that meeting or the next available meeting. Gentlemen, we need an approval of the agenda. One amendment. The date on the agenda says May 4th. I'd like to have that changed to May 11th, 2020.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Made and seconded by Mr. Holt. I'll poll the board. Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Lorishell?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Vote is in the affirmative. 5-4. This time, announcement, submission of public comments, questions, or concerns. We have none tonight. So we'll move on to appointments. None being. New business, request for sales and solicitation license, Stage Road Farm. In your packet, you'll see a hawkers and vendors license application from Mr. Bell, Mr. Stephen Bell, located at 68 Youngstown Road, interested in selling his fresh produce in the bay from May through October, every Wednesday and Saturday, requesting a half-year peddler's permit fee instead of the full year's cost. If you need any other further information, please don't hesitate to contact Stephen Bell, dated 4/7/20.
Requesting the parking area too.
Excuse me?
He's requesting the parking area near the new bandstand.
He's requesting an area, I took it more, he's requesting an area in the bay that the town owns to sell this fresh produce as a farmer, because the town of Alton does not have a farmer's market. We used to have it underneath the trees down there in the bay, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I think Alton needs a farmer's market at some point in time. We have towns all around us that have farmer's market, Gilmanton, Barnstead, New Durham, even the smaller towns have it. And I know the one in Barnstead is over by the old church, I believe. Don't know where Gilmanton and New Durham's are at. New Durham's, I think, is down by the town hall.
Right by the post office.
Yeah. I'd like to see it. But I think, I really have no problem with it, but I think the town needs to set up something as an area where farmers can sell their fresh produce versus a vendor hawker's farm. Because years ago, Virgil, you might remember, I don't know if Bill or Bob would remember, Locke's Corn used to come downtown and sell their corn out of the back of their truck. They never had to have a fee because
My wife used to be the one selling it.
it used to be that you could not tax a farmer for the fruits of his labor. And I don't know if that's changed since then or not. They used to be in the RSA and the agricultural department. Yeah. But you could not tax a farmer for the fruits of their labor. As long as they were growing it themselves, they could not be charged a peddler's fee or anything like that. I don't know where that stands today, and I'm probably sure Liz is not aware of that old statute. They changed it or not.
have it checked.
But what do you gentlemen think about this application?
I think I like the idea of having a place where people can do it, but I don't think it should be out in the hot sun. I'm sure we could find a good place or something for
Well,
them.
most of them normally will set up a small tent.
Yeah, and you,
Inside the house.
but what I'm saying is, the bay gets real busy, which is a good thing. Whether we put them out on the lawn or something like that, if you're gonna set up tents, because you're gonna get one in there and you're gonna end up with a lot more.
Oh, and I think you're right. I think they should establish themselves and have to come through the board.
And it's a good thing.
And the hours that he's requesting is 3 PM to 6 PM. Saturdays from 10 AM to 1 PM, 3-hour intervals only. It's not like for us the whole day.
3 hours.
But I think if the selectmen want to proceed with this, I think we should set hours of selling farm goods on certain days. I don't think we should just have it every other day, or if somebody else comes in and say, I want to do Thursdays and Sundays. I think we should establish
Certain days,
certain days and
like out of the day. Yeah.
Oh, like he's saying, Wednesdays.
just the whole.
My experience is most towns have a farmers organization, and the towns designate an area where they can have their farmers markets, and they have a schedule that they do them at. And whether it's every Saturday or Friday or whatever, but they determine the schedule, but the town gives them an area. But the thing is, if you start pulling it on the weekends, that's the area to do it. Because, that's,
Busy.
if you end up with 10 farmers down there, and if you end up approving this one, I believe what he's asking for is half price also.
Yes.
I don't know what our policy is on the markets and vendors. That's something, Liz, if you could, I'd appreciate getting. We have a lot of policies in this town, yeah.
So this one falls under the sales and solicitation ordinance?
Is that in the personnel policy?
No,
No,
no.
see, I don't have any.
It's a separate,
Everything's separate.
So, but, do we have a manual on that type of stuff? Yes. Okay.
I was told you were given it when you started.
No. I got some stuff, but not that.
You'd like a week to go be able to get that policy and look at it before you even make a decision like Mr. Holt?
Well,
And also have the town administrator maybe come back with some recommendations about a farmers group. Mr. Bell was one of the original ones that started the farmers.
Yeah.
Selling down in the Bay years ago. And then he left, he went back to Barnstead, and he's been doing other markets in Tilton and Wolfboro. Now he's bought a place here in Alton on Youngstown Road, which he's doing most of his farming right off his property there. And that's why he's requesting this.
I mean, I'm just thinking about in the future, this farmer's market starts picking up. We don't want to fill in the Bay parking lot.
Well, how about if we had Liz to get with the building inspector, code enforcement officer, and look at this and see where in the Bay we could set up a farmer's market, whatever. And I'm thinking between where the new parking lot is down to the entrance of the campground, you have about 10 spots right there.
Yeah, that's what he was referring to.
Well, I don't know if that's what it's referring to, but I'm looking at where there'd be less congestion. Or you have underneath the trees where they used to have.
It says here near the new bandstand, which I believe he's referring to the historical gazebo.
But yeah, I think so. And I think there's less congestion on that side than there would be under the tree and on the other side.
And two is, there'd be so many parking spots, and unless this will be what would be available for farmers.
Yes.
I mean, possibly at that, I don't know. But I would say we let the town administrator and
Well,
code enforcement will work it out.
you gotta also think about extending hours. Because other people come in, they're not for 3 hours.
Well, most of them aren't. Most farmers market only run about 3 hours. They use it one evening and one morning, in the different towns I've looked at. They don't normally go much more than 3.
Yeah, they usually hit one day a week,
Yeah.
and then one weekend in the morning. Like,
Wolfboro, sorry, if we're gonna have it at the Bay, We also have to consider other things that go on down there, like the couple of craft fairs. We can't put the farmer's market where they're usually putting their tents.
Right.
So I kind of think, yeah, the other side of the parking lot will be better.
That's what he's asking.
This gentleman's coming forward when nobody else has. So maybe Wednesdays and Saturdays is not a bad idea to start this thing, and then if it grows, you know. But I mean, at least he's coming up with an idea. Nobody else has approached us about it.
Do you want to table it for 1 week? Maybe have Liz, the code enforcement officer, look at it and also give Mr. Holt the chance to look at the solicitation.
And can we have Liz look up the agricultural law?
Sure.
See,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to table this till next week.
We have a motion on the floor to table this request from Mr. Bell for a week. Do I have a second? I have a motion by Mr. Holt and a second by Mr. Whitman. Any further discussion? I'll poll the board. Mr. McDonald?
yes.
Mr. Rochelle?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Vote is in the affirmative. Do you want me to call Mr. Bell to relay what we're doing, or would you?
I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we might be able to get a little direction on this from our town administrator on account of she takes part in the Barnstead.
Does she know? Oh, she never saw her through this whole discussion. did she?
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I did not know that. I don't know what she does in her private life. Probably less I know is better.
Wow.
Okay, moving on. Request for a slow children's sign, Youngtown Road. I don't think we need to call the chief on this. I think we can discuss it by his memo that came in. They did tell him earlier today, he could probably have the night off.
Chairman, has Youngstown Road become more populated
Yes, it has.
in recent years? I don't know.
Moves in Youngstown Road with kids. So you always see them out there riding their bikes and stuff out on that road.
I always think a sign like that is beneficial to families to try to control and curb oncoming traffic.
Yeah, the chief indicated that he thought most of the traffic was the people that live there, but they have a sign out the end of the road on 140 all the time. So I'm sure customers are using that road too.
Well, they do have a farmer out there that does sell meat and poultry products, and pork products. The other thing is kind of like my road, Jesus Valley Road, people come down it because they want to go down it, and they stop and ask you, so where does the road go? And they say, it goes nowhere, and they say, what do you mean? I said, it's a dead end, it goes nowhere, but they still want to see the end of the road.
Yeah, we gotta go to the end.
So do I have a motion to approve these, slow children sign, please?
Make a motion that we approve the Youngstown Slow Children sign.
Second?
The motion made by Mr. McDonald to approve the slow children sign on Youngstown Road, second by Mr. LaRochelle. Any further discussion? Mr. Holt?
I mean, I'm gonna vote for it. The sign won't do any problem. But, I got a little problem sometimes. We sign ourselves to death. They don't look good to start off with, in my opinion. Most of the signs, no parking signs, but this sign, they don't do any harm other than aesthetics. And, I'll vote for it. But, sometimes I think we gotta kind of be careful. Getting too many signs out there, in my opinion, they just don't look good. It looks like New York City.
In certain areas, I'll agree with you, because we get too many, nobody pays attention to them.
That
Circle's one of them.
They don't do any harm, but sometimes I don't think they do any good either.
Well, I think a sign like this is a safety sign, more than just signs per se for advertising on it. I have more of a problem with advertising than I do safety signs, put it that way.
Oh, no.
You could be like the state down at the Circle, have the 4x6 or 4x8 sign, then put two small signs in front of it.
That was brought up, maybe we ought to send something, maybe no one's seen it yet, except for us. Okay, is motion made, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 1, number 2, number 3, 154.
You didn't hold
Excuse me, boy, I get so used to doing it the other way. Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. Vote is in the affirmative. Number 3, 154 Main Street sidewalk discussion. I did take the pictures. They're not great. They didn't come out well, as good as I thought.
Yeah.
I think you folks all know the area we're talking about. I was taking a picture when a truck pulled in. I couldn't get them to move for me, so. If you drove by today or tonight, you notice that the holes have all been repatched again, so this is the second time.
Summer.
But
Who did it?
I don't know who did it today or
State did that today. Yeah.
State order?
Yeah, they put some cold patch in. But the problem is that whole crosswalk is so broke up
Oh, it's terrible.
that it's constant, you gotta patch it.
Oh, it's gonna be fixed eventually,
Right, and right now, we have the money in the sidewalk
We have
fund,
Mr. Roberts.
and
should be able to cut that out.
like Kenny said, yeah, Kenny, the best thing to do is grind it out and just replace it.
Work with the state on it.
Yeah.
Work together with them and take care of that rip right out.
And just get it,
Well,
like Kate said, they gotta patch it once a month.
why don't we, how do we get it done?
Tell Kenny, okay, do it.
All right, guys, I'm
Sidewalk.
gonna rein it back in because too many conversations going on. So the idea was, like Mr. McDonald said, work with the state, have Liz get in contact with the district engineer up there. Mr. Roberts asked me to have Liz get in contact with him to see if there's any funds available for the state down in this area. Work with the town to grind out to the white line. I remember that, that's what we talked about. Very
Yeah, couple feet off it, he said.
going right up to the private property, cutting a line along the village store, which is owned by the Shields, all the way over to the sidewalk, straightening the crosswalk out a little bit. But if you notice now, the crosswalk curves.
Yeah, follows the white line.
It does. Grind it down to the base, put a good solid base back in, and then bring it back up. Not go over any old pavement. That way there, that would help hold it better.
Yeah.
There was a comment made about the pothole on the town road side to the parking lot side of the village store, but as I went down and I looked at it, that's all on private property, because where our right of way goes through, it's nowhere near that pothole, so we have to go back and tell the village store that's on their property, not the town's property. But this is something we need to look at. Mr. Roberts felt that GMI could do this, come in and grind it. It would take a couple of times to grind it because the base there is so deep. He believes it could be anywhere from 8 to 10 inches of asphalt in there. Over the years. But first, I thought if we could work with the state to see if they can help with any cost of this. I do not have any estimates. Mr. Roberts should be getting back to us with cost estimates on this. But I know with the New Hampshire DOT, they're coming to the end of their year and a lot of their projects have been frozen because of everything that's going on. But this is something that's a safety hazard, especially to the elderly.
I've already seen one person fall, and I was
Just a hole.
there.
There's no question it's gonna be fixed. That crosswalk is painted, sidewalk. It's really not a crosswalk. Crossing the back of it. Who paints that? We do.
We do.
The town?
Yes,
So
sir.
Walton does that. Okay. I don't think our town administrator should be the one dealing with the state to get that fixed. I think it should be our road, head of our road department. And, it should be taken care of. And if the state doesn't want anything to do with it, we'll have to make up our mind if we're gonna address it ourselves.
Money could come out of the road reconstruction fund, could come out somewhat out of the sidewalk, or it could come out of the sidewalk fund, but the sidewalk fund will be asked to be used this year for the spraying of all the concrete sidewalks that are in town. Mr. Roberts is getting the cost of the sealant and how it has to be applied. The one along Main Street, the new one has to be done this year because it's been 5 years. And there's one in the Bay, I believe, that has to be done too. So we can keep our concrete from falling apart. I would agree with you on one instance, if he was dealing with the highway foreman at the local shed over here in Alton, but we have to deal with the district engineer first, which is more administrative than anything. That's why I'd like to have our town administrator maybe call first and have two managers talk about it and see if something could be done.
The only concern I have with that, Mr. Chairman, and it's nothing against the town administrator, it's time consuming.
I understand that.
And, If that's the wish of the board, I'll go along.
So I don't need a motion. Town Administrator, Liz, do you have any questions or concerns with contacting the district? Have anything you want to input on this? Okay. So I don't believe I need a motion. I believe a consensus would be well enough with this. So Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Will that be put on the agenda as old business?
Coming forward, yes. I don't know if she'll be able to get it all done 1 week with everything else she has to do for us, plus along with emergency management. So it could be 2 weeks out.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, as long as we're talking about that general area, I think I heard Ken mention maybe at our last meeting, it's line painting time. Where the road comes down behind the village store and around, that line really needs to be put, that's dangerous.
The white line, the other line will be replaced, yes.
Yeah. People don't know where the road is.
That whole thing should be ripped out.
Okay, that's for another meeting.
Put in.
That's for another meeting.
Mhm.
So the consensus is to have the town administrator contact the Sixth Street office and talk with the district engineer. We'll wait to hear back from her. Next one is number 4, revenue discussion. At your table, you'll see, town clerk and Laura has given us an updated revenue.
I have a,
And I'm going to turn it over to the town administrator first
all right.
and have her go, and then we'll go from there.
So, this revenue report is just a few days old. And, in addition, there is another, I believe another, revenue report that you will find at your seat. This one is from the finance manager showing April to April. This is a courtesy copy for you. You had requested March's revenue last year to this year. This is April. Actually, this revenue report, I think it was, had this on the
Yes,
agenda.
every month, yes.
I'm talking about one.
Oh, you want to talk more about this one in the TA report?
Well, I didn't, I don't really have anything to report on this. This is just informational only from the finance manager, just so that you can see the difference in revenues this year. There are some differences, and most likely those differences will continue as the year goes on, which is a little concerning with the state of emergency. I mean, I can talk about the TA thing right now.
Well, we were talking about revenue. We probably shouldn't have it all once so we don't break it up.
So, in briefly discussing revenues, or I should say a lack of revenues, with the chairman of the board late last week, I am planning on going through the entire budget line by line to see where the board can not expend in order to save appropriated monies for over expenditures which will occur this year due to the state of emergency. I don't have an entire list prepared yet, as this was, I think it was Friday.
Friday, yes.
We briefly touched on it, but you all need to start thinking about the rest of this as far as the revenues decreasing, certain revenues decreasing, expenditures increasing, because we are not allowed to overspend the bottom line of the entire town budget, as you know.
Should seal the budget anyways.
So,
No spending. No unauthorized spending.
We're gonna have to work with all departments.
yes, because some things are necessary. I mean, the bulk of all the budgets we're going to need, but not everything. You know, when there's a state of emergency, you have to look at everything. You know, what is needed, what is not needed, what is necessary, not necessary, and it's starting. It has started already. We're almost halfway through the year. We have another 6 weeks to go, but I will be reviewing the budget thoroughly, and I hope to have some recommendations to bring back to you as far as which line items could probably be frozen or partially frozen, as far as spending the appropriations. We don't know how the tax bill revenues are going to come in this, next month. This will be a key factor in it with, so many people on unemployment, and there are some concerns of a lack of revenue coming in from the tax bill. The warrant is in the signature file. The town clerk is giving 49 days for people to pay their tax bills due by July 1st. We'll have a better outlook on that, July 2nd. But we have to prepare, or at least think about preparing for the possible inevitable, which is that probably will not be receiving all of the revenues that we should be receiving in order to pay these things and all bills and services and stuff in the budget.
Would it be worth sealing the budget until July 10th or something?
Well, I think for right now, until, for the next month or so, if I can come back with some of the things that are definitely kind of a no-brainer as far as stopping, halting.
We should halt all unnecessary spending.
Right, but who makes that determination?
The board, us.
Right, but what I'm recommending is, I'll come back with some recommendations for you to approve as far as not spending them. And then perhaps, we can have a discussion then for others.
Possibly.
Before I call on somebody else, the only thing I'd like to say, if you look at the chart that Laura gave you from tax collector's office and everything, the only department that's up this year so far, really up, and it's not a whole lot, is only the water department by $6,700. The rest are $245 or down $42,000. The taxes that will be coming in, the ones that the bank pay for individuals on the property, those taxes are a sure given because the people have paid in their mortgages, okay? Those will have to be paid because the bank can't hold on to money. But the ones like us that pay individually, those are the folks that could be finding it tough to pay. So what I had to talk to Liz about was going to every department head in the town and saying, where in your budget can you do without this year because of the state of emergency? Not that it's not needed, because I don't like to hear any time that it's not needed. If it's not needed, then why do we have it in the budget? But it's more so, what can we get by this year with spending so we don't overrun the bottom line and that other departments might need that money, such as the solid waste center, the police department, the highway department with overtime. And that's what she's going to do. It might take 2 weeks for her to get these numbers back to us and all the department heads to look at their things. And that's what I asked her to do, not to bring it before you folks, but to try to give her a heads up, which I think a lot of you have been thinking about. I know I have, so I gave her a heads up to start working on it a little easier. To say that the state of night, we freeze the budget, no unnecessary spending. Well, we all have to decide what's unnecessary, what is not a necessity. But I think it's very hard to say no unnecessary spending tonight because the department head or an individual come out and say, well, I needed this. We needed this for our department. I think we need to give them that week or two.
Give them the chance.
To come up and look at it within 2 weeks, let us know. But that's up to the wishes of the board, but that's how I felt about it. So I'll call on somebody else if they.
Over the years, we've just sealed the budget.
Usually in the springtime, yes. No unnecessary spending until town meeting time. That I understand. So it's basically payroll and stuff like that.
But even now, where we're not sure what we're going to have until after July, freeze it now and wait, and we'll look at it July 10th or July 12th. Or.
Well, then what you'd have to do is say, what you would have to do is put a motion and say, freeze all spending except for payroll, taxes that are due to the federal government, and monthly bills such as lights, heat, and stuff like that. And I might be missing some things too that have.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Supplies.
unnecessary spending.
Well,
When you say unnecessary, that's unnecessary spending, is your lights, payroll,
Right,
taxes.
then you got supplies on top of that also have to be given, especially the PPEs right now, the paper, the office supplies that are going to be needed.
state of emergency supplies too.
So I would like to, myself, personally, I would like to see us give the town administrator at least 2 weeks to come up with them. Talk to the department. It shouldn't take any longer. Mr. Holt.
I've been really concerned with this for quite a while. If you look at this sheet we have, the total for the month of April, you know, we're minus, the last page, you know, we're minus $57,000.
Compared to last year, yes, sir.
Compared to last year.
Correct.
So, you know, and last month we were minus also. I don't have that with me. But, and I think we're gonna be minus most all the months. But the thing is, the tax collections, the electronic ones, which are through the bank, in my discussions with a banker about it, if the person, the only money that they will release towards the taxes at this time, this is what just one bank told me, is what the people have put in. In other words, if the taxes are $5,000 on this mortgage property and they stop making mortgage payments, they stop making the tax payments, and it might be they'll only have $3,000 in tax payments. That's what we will receive from the bank, not the $5,000.
And that's true, I agree with you on that.
Okay, so, you know, I was told that the electronic amounts were so much percentage, it was 30%, I believe, or something like that. But it might not be 30%. I don't think we should be planning on 30%. The other thing is, I think you got the right idea, Mr. Chairman. I think all department heads that spend money should be made aware of this situation. No unnecessary spending.
Right.
And I think, of course, we have to determine what's unnecessary. Now, we've been spending money here, this board, in the last few meetings. You know, we bought a four-wheeler and a trailer. In my opinion, that wasn't necessary.
But that's out of revenue.
Let me finish first.
But, well, that's all money.
Let's capital reserves.
Wait a minute, let Mr. Holt finish, and I'll give you a chance.
That's money. That's money that's over here. That doesn't mean it has to be spent, you know. So, yeah, in my opinion. But you take your Parks and Rec department. I believe they're going to be basically shut down this summer on all their programs. So they should be not overspending. Maybe?
Correct, well, I'm letting you finish instead of interrupting you, that's all. I'm letting you finish the speaking before I answer you.
Yeah, no, that's okay, you can do. But, so I think, you know, we should have good department heads in this town, and they should be made aware of this problem, and they should be able to do it.
You have to work.
Yeah, okay, wait a minute. You're all done talking? I just want to make sure for everybody's side.
I'm just not in favor of freezing the budget at this time.
Call Virgil.
That money that we spend for the six-wheeler is money that is put aside, that's been put aside for those. That is out of our capital reserve accounts for all the equipment down there to make sure that we can get people off of Mount Major. Years ago, that association gave us that six-wheeler. We've used it, what, 10 years now, 12 years? If it's not running and somebody gets hurt up there, we need to get up there. And I think that was money well spent when we replacing that six-wheeler. And it's not out of our budget, it's out of the capital reserves, that money that the townspeople and the voters put aside for that purpose.
Mr. Larochelle.
Oh, I just want to reiterate that yes, I think that we need to not do a freeze at this time. And I think we need to talk to each and every department and department head and see what is non-essential that they can cut from their budget.
Mr. Whitley?
Ultimately, yeah, the next couple of weeks, I guess Liz meeting with the department heads, they'll give us a report on what they think is not essential. Ultimately, we'll decide what is not essential and what is. But yeah, it's like giving them a heads up. You know, for me, I know at a past meeting, Mr. Holt was concerned about the revenues that were going to come in, you know, reduced because of the pandemic. My initial thought maybe it shouldn't be all that bad. I can see it with fees and things like that. People just decide not to do something because they don't have ready cash. But as far as overall, I mean, I'm sure the government program hasn't worked out as well, everybody getting their money and people getting unemployment. I understand with some people that's really been slow coming, but the way it's set up, people that have lost their jobs stand to get like $600 extra a week than they were getting when they were working.
That's only up to July 12th.
Okay.
And as of right now, that will end, but let's not go there. So we don't go in.
And I know
Well,
some,
well, my point is, I'm not so sure, yeah, we're gonna take a hit on property taxes. It's good to do this out in front first, have the department heads say what they think, you know, they could do without or whatever. But let's not automatically assume it's gonna be a total catastrophe as far as what will come in on property taxes. Because, you know, I personally think the economy is going to start to improve as we open up again. But again, there are some safeguards in that government program if it works right. And of course, it might not because it's run by government. But people, if I was unemployed, if I'd lost my job and I was getting unemployment plus $600 a week, I'd be paying off my property taxes, you know, so.
Oh, somewhat, it depends where priorities lie. Any other discussion? Are we all in agreement to give the town administrator time with the department heads to work through this and come back with recommendations? And then it's up to us to look at the recommendations. If you think they need to go further, then it'll be up to the board to go further. Sounds good. That sound good to you, Les? Okay.
yeah, then I got one question on this.
Yes, sir.
If we got current year revenues, 28,783.85, balance uncollected, 28,783.85, which is it? Have we collected it or haven't we?
Well, I'm gonna have to ask Liz to bring Laura into the next meeting on the phone.
I agree.
Yeah.
This has been my problem before with these sheets is
Well, let's just go to page
Liz.
one.
You're on this other one?
Yes, the one in the book.
All right, guys, hold on just a minute. So every budget that we look at, whether it's tax collectors or general government, everything always shows in the negative. I remember Laura explaining this to me, and it has to do with the BSMI software. Everything will show in the negative till we get to the end of the year, when all the revenues have come in. And that's the way the software, but to have someone explain it to you better so you understand it, would be better to have Laura come to our meeting.
I'd rather fix it so when we look at these, we know what we're looking at. It says, if it's collected revenue, then it's there, not uncollected.
I understand what you're saying, but Mr. Holt's holding up something, I'll let him have in a minute, but Laura can explain it so much better, the way the system works. For me that I work in a business that has QuickBooks and everything else that shows my revenues, never shows negative. Hold on. So that's what I'd like to do, is have Laura, and I'm gonna request that at our next meeting, she can call in, Mr. Holt.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Mr. Chairman. But if you look at the,
You can read it.
This is easy.
One at a time. Yes, that is easy. That's very easy to have that in a perfect world. But Laura inputted this all on her own. She didn't use the BSMI software.
Oh,
Okay? This is the problem here. Your budget anticipated revenues is all through the BSMI, which they're still kind of archaic, from my understanding, from the last 3 years in their DOS system. I'm going to call it DOS, not Windows. So this is one of the problems. This is why, if you remember a couple of years ago, they wanted to change from BSMI, go to another company. But the cost and the expense of doing that, the selectmen did not want it. I was one of them.
but it was also the people that were working in that office didn't want it.
Well, Paulette Wentworth, who was one of ours, had no problem with BSMI. I think when we hired the new one, which would have been Troy.
Yeah, he's the one that
He
wanted to change it.
he wanted to change. I don't know where Laura stands, but when we hired Laura, the one reason we gave her, offered her the position was because she was used to BSMI
Right.
software. So where we stand right now, like I said, I'd like to bring Laura into our meeting, have her explain it to you in detail. And I know the one you got tonight on your desk, for the revenue stuff, that was very easy to read. As a businessman, it's very easy for me to
How
read.
it should be.
Okay.
Yeah, right here.
Yes.
Every
It's all layman's terms.
I'm gonna We're gonna kind of leave it at that so we can move on.
Can I just ask one question? In your packet tonight, you got this. We get them all the time.
Yeah,
Virgil, what do you do with yours?
I got them on a file at the house.
Do you read them? Yeah,
I read them before I sign them in there.
no, I mean these here.
Your expenditures and stuff.
Yes, that's what we
I go through every line in there before I sign them.
Yeah, but you just said you didn't know what they were all about.
No, I know what they're about, I'm just.
He
on
doesn't
the
like seeing the
revenues,
parentheses
And then
saying
the
that.
parentheses says we haven't collected it, so what is it, did we collect it or didn't we?
Where's the done like?
But I go through all the bills in there.
Oh, yeah. Well,
But he doesn't like seeing there's the parentheses in the last column
yeah.
saying
We haven't collected it.
Right.
That's what I have a problem with, as well. I always have.
So
okay.
I'll have Laura in at our next meeting. Maybe she can explain it a little easier to everybody because I can't remember how to explain it to you to make you understand. Is there anything else on the revenue aspect of this? If not, we're going to move on to old business, Blue Plant funding proposed solar pilot agreement. So before we get to Mr. Funk on the phone, I'd like to have us discuss this a little bit, and then we can go to the phone, Mr. Funk. Does that sound okay with you? Liz? Okay. So gentlemen, in your, you've got the pilot program that they're, proposed solar pilot agreement with Blue Plant funding. So this time, I'm going to open up the floor to all of you before I get my 2 cents worth in. See what you have to say. So, Mr. McDonald, I'll call on you first.
You sent this to the town attorney?
Yes, you have his response in your binder.
Yeah, it says, hi, I agree with all Rob's observations. Why
The whole paragraph there, yeah.
isn't he writing, we're paying him. He should be able to write out a response on what he thinks of this contract, not what Rob or you or me or anybody else thinks. He's getting paid good money. He gets $250 an hour, and he agrees with our tax collector. He should be able to write us out something. This is the 3rd time he's done this to us. When we send stuff to him, he agrees with somebody else and doesn't write his perspective on it, because he could have picked this thing apart and told us exactly what ones we need to look at.
Well, he did, actually. If you read the full paragraph, there is more to
did.
it than that.
I did read the whole
Okay.
paragraph. And I think that he should be writing stuff out. He should have went through this whole thing for us.
And sometimes he does.
It's not sometimes. If we send him up something and ask him to go through it,
I think
that's enough.
Easy. We're all working together here for one common, we all work together here for one common goal, the taxpayers of our community. Just the whole.
Being new on the board, I'm a little confused about this whole issue. This is private property. Going to put solar panels on. The person that owns the property must be leasing or getting payments through the solar panel project through a private company.
One would think, I'm not gonna assume anything.
Well, no, basically, that's what I said. I'm assuming. I don't know this, and it's probably got nothing to do with the issue, but this property is it in land use now? If it is,
It is.
who's gonna pay the penalty to come out of land use? I don't know.
I don't think there is a penalty to come out of land use where it's a solar project and there's gonna be no impact. Maybe Liz has information on that.
so. The area in which the array will be on is in the current use designated land.
Yeah.
In that particular area, will have an invisible line drawn around it, and that portion will be removed from current use.
Will the penalty be paid? When you take land out of current use, you have to pay a percentage penalty.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure of that I didn't see that in here, that's why and also,
It
who
would be in that.
pays the taxes on it?
So the taxes on it, in this particular situation, like other solar arrays, there's something called pilot. It's a pilot program, PILOT, payment in lieu of taxes. That's done for other properties too, Spruce Court up on Old Wolfboro, that's a pilot agreement. Solar arrays have pilot agreements. And so the amount that's in the proposal that you have there would be in lieu of taxes on that chunk of land that has that invisible line drawn around it.
So how much would the taxes be on that property?
Well, according to the proposal, it's $10,000 a year.
Are we sure of that? Have we asked?
It's in there.
I know, but this is, it's in there from them. Did we ask the tax collector?
The assessor.
Or the assessor, I mean?
In his report,
Yep, so he provided a memo in there, it's right after the legal opinion, a couple pages after the legal opinion. That's from our assessor. He has a few concerns with the pilot proposal, but the concerns are workable, in my opinion.
I don't see his tax amount in here.
terms and conditions too, the extension at the sole option of Suncook for 2 to 5 year periods is risky. If item 2 above is adopted, I believe it will change the disposition of this clause. I don't agree with the ability of the entire entity being taxed to dictate the terms of taxing authority. At bare minimum, this clause should be a mutual decision, not sole discretion of Suncook.
And if you go a couple pages beyond that memo from the assessor, that would be the proposed contract from Blue Planet. And the contract would be between the town and the property owner, which is called Suncook Valley Solar LLC. So Blue Planet is the agent managing the property for Suncook Valley Solar LLC, which is the property owner.
So I don't like it when a agent of another company or the owner of that is having someone write up a contract that they want us to sign. I feel that our attorney, assessor, should work on it and give them the contract from what they want, and we put it into our terms, say, these would be our terms. You got to agree to it or not. The other two is, up on Spruce Terrace, which is the elderly housing, I have no problem with that in lieu of tax, because we're affording an elderly housing complex.
Section 8.
This here, we're providing in lieu of taxes for private investors to come and invest in something which they're going to be making more than $3,000, and so good for them. But the taxpayers themselves should not have to suffer in lieu of taxes. Because if that was the point, we have a lot of elderly people that live in town. They have no children anymore in school. They're not a burden onto the system, except maybe fire for ambulance or fire in their house. But there's still, I've never liked in lieu of taxes for corporations to come in, build a big company, and then not have to pay their fair share of taxes, and it goes back on the working folks of the town. And that's one of the problems I have with this here. Two is we're taking something out, they're taking something out of current land use, they'll pay a penalty on it. It will be taxed a certain amount, but they only want to pay $3,000 versus $10,000. That, well, okay, I'll stop there because she just raised her hand. Go ahead.
So it's $3,333.34 per megawatt. So this is a 3 megawatt solar array, so it would be $10,000 a year in taxes.
Yeah.
And just for the record, pilot contract rates, it's normal for the entity or owner or whatever to propose the contract to the town.
And that's fine, but all I'm saying is the town should make their contract based off of theirs and what's in the best interest of the town. Because this contract really that they're presenting, I guess it'd be like if I looked at it, if I was getting divorced, that the husband and wife get the same lawyer. That lawyer's gonna look at somebody else's interest on the bill. So when they're proposing a contract on this, they're looking out for their interest, not so much the towns. I'm not gonna say they're 100% against the town, but they're in the interest of their investors, more so than the town itself. At least that's the way I'm reading it, but that's up to you guys to decide. So I'm gonna stop there, go to Mr. Rochelle.
Liz, obviously, he's the owner of the property, is still paying property taxes on the rest of the property,
Yes.
without that one area that is being leased to the company for the pilot.
Currently, the owner of the property is currently paying current use taxes for the entire
Correct.
parcel, including that area where
Correct.
this doesn't go into effect until the array is up.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But so he'll continue to pay his taxes on the rest of the portion of the property that he owns in lieu of just that one area where the pilot agreement is taking place.
Yeah.
That area of, I don't recall the size of the lot.
It's about 50 acres, 55
Was it just about 50? Okay, that's what I remember, okay.
The lot, yeah, and then in that is the area.
Well, the lot is 108 acres. They took 50
They
acres out of the
took
back
50
fields.
acres, right.
They cleaned up the back fields.
So,
This is over by the old Maya farm.
So in other words, my question would be, what would be the tax on that 50 acres? First, of that, just the 50 acres up there, what would the tax be on that
just
versus the $10,000 payment we'd be getting from?
I can find out,
Not when it's in current land use though, right?
right.
Right.
The current land use would be very minimal.
Would be minimal.
Pennies on the dollar. Yeah, I can find out what that would be.
That way they would give us an idea.
Yeah,
Jim? You'd also have to find out, they're gonna build solar panels on it. Those are worth money to be taxed. It'd be like you're building a garage on it. You got the land and the infrastructure, which are the solar panels. What are those worth? That's what the town would be taxing on. My problem with it, Mr. Chairman, is, let's say somebody wanted to build a building there to do small manufacturing, and they got approval through the boards in the town, the planning board, the zoning board, right? They would be paying taxes on the property and the building. I mean, what would that be worth? Like you're saying, you know, and it's the same thing. You have the 50 acres and the infrastructure they're gonna put on it. What's the value?
When we get to Mr. Funk, maybe he can give us the value of what the cost of the construction and what the solar power value would be. The assessor would have to tell us then what the assessed values of those combinations would be together, land value and panel value as fixed property. I don't know if they would consider this as fixed property where it could be unbolted and moved at any time. Kind of like the co-ops. If you remember years ago, the power company sued the state of New Hampshire, different towns, stating that their substations were not fixed because they could be picked up and moved at any time. And there was a big lawsuit in that. The towns lost a lot of tax revenue because of that, because the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the power company. So
There's very little maintenance to this.
and unfortunately, our politicians, and I think they were lobbied hard, and our politicians gave away on some of this and said in lieu of taxes because there's no impact into the community, such as schools, fire and stuff. So they gave them a break. But unfortunately, when they gave them a break, the investors are making all the money. So it's not fair to the average taxpayer. That's the way I look at it. That has to sit and work all year long to pay their property taxes because things increase. This is a fixed rate for the term of the contract, which I don't think is right. I think Rob had some good suggestions in there for the way the contract should read.
so in looking at all of this and some of my experience in the past, I think $10,000 for a 3 megawatt solar array is good. I do agree with the assessor's concerns. I think there can be some tweaks made to this contract.
Until they're fully up and running, you get
That's right.
3,000
But
megawatt.
these people are in it to make money. They're not going to let this drag on and on and on. They want to get it built. They want to get it online. They want the revenue to start coming in. So it's not going to be something that's going to be dragging on and on and on once this pilot agreement is approved. And when I say people, I mean the landowner and Blue Planet. I'm convinced of that. I've seen that before. They want to get this thing going. It's been going, along in the pending,
In 2 years now.
for a while.
They're not gonna drag their feet.
They want to get it going and, I think the tweaks are reasonable that are mentioned here.
You don't think we ought to try to get a little more money for the taxpayers?
I don't know if it would work necessarily. I think it's a very decent amount.
But why can't we have Rob look at this and find out exactly what the tax would be he's got to have some formula down there to figure out what it'd be worth with these on it and what the tax rate would be if we didn't do the deal.
That's what I was asking.
In
Have him figure it out and then send this to the town attorney and have him write us something instead of having it sent to an assessor to look at a contract that an attorney should have been doing.
So I'll just reiterate again, and I won't say it again, but in my opinion, for a 3-megawatt solar array, this is a decent amount to start off with. I think 20 years is too long, as the assessor and the attorney have both said. I think 10-year increments are decent, and you know, the other things that you have read.
You might be on, you're going 10, I was going 5.
Five is even better.
All right, at this point, do you want to bring Mr. Funk in on this conversation? I haven't brought him in yet because I wanted us to all talk about it first to get it all out.
And he could probably answer some of the questions here tonight. That's going on.
I still do not like the purpose of them proposing a contract to us. I think it's better if our attorney looks at it, proposes a contract for the town with this, maybe there's some of this stuff in there, but they negotiate out that the contract comes from our attorney to enter into a pilot agreement with Blue Planet.
It's not our project, so we're not the ones that.
But they're asking us for in lieu of taxes, so I kind of feel that they want to do this project.
So this is why we're doing this
I
tonight,
understand that.
negotiating.
But any contract should be with the town attorney, and he should write up his contract, they write up theirs, and then they get together and straighten it out.
In the real world, it works differently, I guess, Virgil.
Well, it does for solar arrays.
We pay for them to go
We
through
don't
a tax
own solar arrays.
assessment.
We don't even own the land.
Right.
You know.
Mr. Chairman, if they didn't want to pay taxes, they wouldn't even be here. Am I right or wrong?
No, they are required to propose a pilot to the town, the municipality. All solar arrays are required to do that, to propose a pilot agreement, which is payment in lieu of taxes.
Yeah. In payment in lieu of taxes.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying.
It's
But-
the same thing. It is a taxation document.
Yeah, but if they were willing to pay the taxes, I mean, I could put solar panels on my roof. I could put a solar panel in my backyard. I don't have to come before the town.
No, but it's such
This
a
is
solar
commercial.
farm, but for such a solar farm of this magnitude of a project, they have to come before the town planning board,
Zoning board.
get approval.
I understand.
Then they have the right to ask the town, by state law, they have the right to ask the town, where we're putting this project in, we don't encroach upon your fire, your police, we don't encroach upon your schools, we don't demand many services from you other than, because it's a grassed area, as it was in the report, it could be fire or something like that. They're saying, we don't require all those services as a taxpayer does, so we're asking for a break on our taxes. That's what they're asking for with this program. And they want it for a minimum of 20 years because that would satisfy their investors so they can make more money off the program. If I'm reading into this contract the way I've read it.
Yep. And keep in mind, a solar array on a 50-acre parcel, as an example, is valued much differently and less than a 50-acre parcel with a whole bunch of structures and houses or warehouses or, you know, businesses and things like that. There's a big difference in that.
That's why, yeah, the taxes. Yeah, but my point is, if they weren't trying to get this passed in lieu of taxes, in other words, if they were willing to pay the taxes,
Project would never happen.
It wouldn't. It would, if there's no
No incentive.
If there's
No incentive there.
right, if there's no.
what's the taxes? What would the taxes?
But we don't
That's
know.
what I was just asking.
That's what we have
I
to
know.
know.
I just want to know, I want to compare apples to apples, that's all. What are we getting?
So are you willing to bring Mr. Funk in at this point?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, what I'm thinking, I think goes along with what you were thinking, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just gonna make a quick statement. I am not, never have been in favor of tax breaks for solar farms or solar panels. I don't think the rest of the taxpayers in town should be contributing to that by lowering the taxes. I know it's done in all kinds of industries all over the country, lower, you bring your factory in, we'll lower the taxes. I know it's all the time. This particular thing, solar farm, I'm just not in favor of tax breaks for it. If it's gonna make money, it can be taxed, and they don't need a tax break.
Should be too, is if it's sold, then that break goes away. But we
Well,
have a
that's part of the
discussion.
that's part of the
No,
contract.
it ain't.
Well, no, it's like, in there, if it's sold, the agreement goes on with the next buyers.
That's right.
Yes.
Then we have
Okay.
nothing to say about it.
That's true. So, at this time, you want to bring in Mr. Funk, to answer any of your questions or concerns, or the town administrator can talk to him and let her know what our concerns were. That way, we're not all jumping in. She's kind of heard what our concerns were.
Yeah.
He's probably heard too.
Yeah, he's probably heard too, and he made notes. So at this time, I'll bring in Mr. Funk. Are we all set with Mr. Funk? Good evening, Mr. Funk. Reuben Wentworth here, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I'm sure you've heard our conversations back and forth. Do you have any
Yes, I have,
responses?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. Where should I start? You asked a lot of interesting
Well,
questions. I'm happy to join.
Okay. I don't want to interrupt you, so I guess what I'm going to do is you've heard our conversation, so I'm sure you've made notes all along here. So I will let you start with responding to the notes you took, and then we'll go from there, and I'll ask the board not to interrupt you while you are giving us your responses.
Well, let me start with the duration, because I think that you have concerns that 20 years is too long. Generally speaking, when we set up a solar project, these projects last, in terms of the panels and the durability of things, they last 20 to 30 years. And then we sign up customers, or off-takers as we call them, for 20 to 30 years. And we enter into lease agreements for 20 to 30 years. So really the whole shoot and match is geared towards kind of a long duration investment that we make. And what we want when we come to a town such as yours is we want you to want us there for a long period of time. It is somewhat portable, to your point. These panels and other equipment can be unbolted and moved elsewhere, but we prefer to stay in one spot. There's considerable expense that goes into permitting and length of time, designing the engineering, and just getting into a place that makes sense for solar. Not every place makes sense. And so when we go to our investors, and these investors are really bankers, and we want to, let's say, get debt, and the debt is for 15 years, 18 years, 20 years typically, because of the rest of the attributes of the projects that we just talked about, things like how long is the power contracted for, how long is the leases for. Then we can get longer duration debt of 15 or 18, 20 years, and the financing begins to make sense. If you drop a 5 or 10 year contract, then the lender would rightly say, well, I'm just going to give you a 5 or 10 year loan to match the duration of the pilot agreement, and then they wouldn't ultimately extend credit that was acceptable to the project. So let me digress for a moment and just talk about solar in the state of New Hampshire. It's not a slam dunk. This is not the easiest place to do solar development. Power rates are moderate in the state of New Hampshire, and we will get a reimbursement rate from the utility that I would say is reasonable, but not high by any standards. We are also eligible for renewable energy credits, but when you and these are worth a few cents per kilowatt hour, so it's not worth nothing, but it's a nice little boost. But the total revenue package, when you look at the cost of building in New Hampshire, which is higher, means that it's a kind of a tenuous thing as to whether solar development goes on in New Hampshire or not. And if you look at commercial solar development in New Hampshire, it's not an extensive list of projects. There are perhaps 5 to 15 commercial scale solar projects in New Hampshire, whereas if you went down to the state of Massachusetts, and I'm not trying to sell Massachusetts to anybody, I'm just saying there's hundreds. And it's because they've aggressively courted solar development. New Hampshire's been let's say less until recently been less forgiving as an environment to invest in. And then let's talk a little bit about the part where you mentioned, how much is this worth? Well, initially to build the project, this could be an investment of, let's say, $5 million. This is 4 megawatts of solar, and solar costs usually well over $1 a watt, as we call it. So it could be a $5 million investment. But these things are wasting assets, and they also include in their value the value of a tax credit. The federal government gives a tax credit to the developers or the owners of a solar project, and that's been in the law for some time, and it's going to phase out over the next few years. And once that tax credit is taken, then the value of the project goes down by 30%. And then essentially the project goes down every year after that in value. So if your assessor was to take a look at the project on day one before the tax credit was taken, he'd say, well, it's worth $5 million because that's what you built it for. But then after the tax credit goes off, it's 30% less. And then every year after that, it's a wasting asset. Essentially at the end of 30 years, it's worth nothing. So the pilot agreement is a way to counteract that. It's a way to give you a steady stream of payments over 20 years, plus extensions if you're amenable, and that can be by mutual agreement. And $10,000 is not 100% of what you would have gotten in year one, but by the end of the 20 years should be more than it would have been otherwise. So in some sense, it's balancing out the amount of taxes that you would have got on a declining basis over time is now going to be paid to you steadily in 20 years, over 20 years. So hopefully that would make planning town finances very simple, that you would get $200,000, $10,000 every year for 20 years, and we would owe you $200,000. And so we would tell our owners and investors, this project in the town of Alton on Suncook Valley Road is going to cost you $10,000 every year on July 1st or whatever your fiscal year is, or whether you do it in twice a year, so that they can plan all their finances and say, okay, I'm selling power, I'm paying for the land, we've got Dave and Nancy Hussey lease payment, we've got the maintenance of the equipment, which isn't terribly expensive, and we've got our pilot, and all that returns. It's like a financial investment, just like you were saying. Let's say the investor wants to get a 7 or 8% return. They're going to look at all the revenues from the energy sales and all the expenses that we just talked about, including the pilot. They're going to say, this makes sense to move forward. And if you shorten the duration, or you raise the pilot, or something else, they might just say, well, this one we're not going to do. We're not going to do Alton. Go ahead and go forward with the other ones that we have in the other towns and cities in New Hampshire, but maybe not in Alton until we can strike the right kind of deal. So look, in all the other towns we've dealt with, we've had these similar discussions, and I know people feel like they're subsidizing solar. So I think for the reasons we've just talked about, solar is a unique kind of thing. This isn't an apartment building that I'm going to be refurbishing and it's going to last 50 years, right? Or maybe longer, at which point I might rebuild it or just refurbish it again. Solar is going to get all used up and gone. And so this is something that from a tax standpoint is a little bit unique. It's going to waste away. So the pilot agreement gives you a chance to plan and us a chance to satisfy our investors. And maybe I'll stop there, and maybe that inspired some other questions.
You say you're going to be able to get 5 megawatts out of that?
Wait. Announce yourself though too, so Mr. Funk knows who he's talking.
This is Virgil McDonald.
Hi,
Did you
Virgil.
say how are you? Did you say you're going to be able to get 5 megawatts out of there?
So what we have based our contract on is 3 megawatts AC. So the odd thing about a solar field is that it produces power in direct current, or DC.
Right.
And then it has to convert it to AC power, because the grid that you operate on when you plug into your wall is AC current. So we have to convert it. And in the conversion process, we lose a certain amount of power. So what we start with is 4 megawatts DC, and we end up with 3 megawatts AC. So the pilot agreement is based on the AC, because the DC is a number that can be fudged around a little bit by the developer, and the AC is a commitment between us and the utility. So in this case, the electric cooperative and us and Blue Planet, or really Suncook Valley Solar, have entered into an agreement that says, look, we're going to interconnect 3 megawatts of power at this point on Suncook Valley Road, and that's all the power that we can deliver at one time. We can't deliver 4 megawatts or 5 megawatts. We can only deliver 3. And so that's what the interconnection agreement reads, and that's the best way to write the pilot. The pilot should then agree with the amount of megawatts that are actually being delivered into the grid, which is 3.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody, you other gentlemen have any other questions for Mr. Funk?
You heard the other question that was asked about the actual value of the land, but that's something he would be able to answer. That would have to come from my department. Mr. Funk, this is Paul LaRochelle. How are you?
Good thing.
you have a lot of pilot agreements that you've done that is similar to what you're proposing here in New Hampshire, has been done in Maryland, Massachusetts as well?
Exactly these. We've done them in Maryland, we've done them in Massachusetts. We've actually entered into pilot agreements in Texas. In some states, they have property tax abatements for property taxes, like Florida. We just went by the state law there, which was an 80% abatement. But New Hampshire does not have an abatement law. They simply allow solar energy and other similar projects to enter into pilot agreements.
Okay, and how many years have you been using the pilot contract?
Me personally, about 8 years.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitman, do you have any questions?
No, no questions.
So,
Yes, I have one, Bob Holt. You mentioned the term of the lease in years of the pilot program. You said 20 years is a must, or could that be negotiated?
Well, in my opinion, it's a must. I don't mean to throw down, some kind of challenge to the Board of Selectmen. That's not my style. But my experience has been that investors not only want 20 years, but they want the ability to extend the pilots. But that could be at mutual agreement. But all of the investors that we talk to who like to buy solar energy projects because they offer a very reliable income, kind of like a bond or something like that. There's not a lot of moving parts, right? It's just a solar panels on steel racks, drilled in, or in this case, they're actually set on top of Dave and Nancy Hussey's land because the land is so rocky. I don't think we're going to drill a lot of holes there. But they want these to look like a 20-year a bond or something like that. So they want these well, this is a fancy New York term, and I apologize because I know we have a lot of road signs in New York City, but this is the way the investment community works. They want a long duration investment vehicle, and a solar energy project is attractive from that standpoint. It delivers income over a long period of time, and they want to match the income against the expenses. So the expenses, again, could be lease payments, or they could be pilot expenses, or they could be maintenance of the field. There isn't a whole lot other to do on that, other than well, I can't even think of anything else. But, or insurance, I guess, is the last one.
Thank you.
well, I guess at this time, Mr. Funk, you answered one of the concerns that we have brought up. Liz, did you have any questions?
Just check minutes here. Hi, Alan, it's Liz Dion.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. I have a couple of questions and concerns from the assessor, which I agree with. One of them is, there's no page numbers on this, but on page 2, the small paragraph right above number 3, should probably be changed so that it's a mutual agreement rather than the owner agreement, the owner being the only one to determine that.
And Liz, that's probably fine, because I think what you'll find if we get to a renewal period, that the town will actually want to do a renewal.
Okay. There are a couple of other things, but the first thing that I noticed was there's no opt-out clause, and we usually like to have an opt-out clause in any sort of a contract that we sign. So that's something that you and I can talk about later.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have a couple of other things from the assessor as well, which we can talk about later. One of them was on page 2, number 4. We would like to have an explanation of this value, so that probably could be added into number 4. page 3, number 8. I think that paragraph needs to be worked on a little bit. So that
Well, I'd be happy to
Yeah.
to do that.
Okay, yeah. All right, so you and I can touch base at some point in the near future, as long as the board is comfortable with that, and come up with some of these things. I'm not sure if 5 years is really too short. I mean, from what I'm familiar with, it's always usually a 20-year contract. I don't know about a 30
I'm
year.
trying to negotiate here.
I know. I just thought I was.
And I
Mr.
understand
Funk
where
is
he-
starting high and I'm starting low.
I understand where he's
We'll
coming
see where
from
we
too,
come
but
in
when
the
it
middle.
comes to the borrowing and
No, I understand that. So, Mr. Funk, at this time, I'm gonna probably end our conversation. I appreciate you standing by and listening to us tonight, answering our questions. Then I'll ask my fellow members here to decide how they want to proceed with this, and ask if they want the town administrator to sit down and work out some of the differences that she has concerns with for the board and some of the board's members, and then have her get back in touch with you. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely fair. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for answering our concerns as you listen to us. I do appreciate it, and hopefully we can move forward to this here in the very near future.
Well, and I'd love to be there in person next time, but I'm glad to be here remotely. Thank you.
Love you, but if you came up to New Hampshire from New York, we'd have to quarantine you for 2 weeks.
That's true.
Just kidding you. Well, thank you for your time tonight, sir, and we will be talking to you in the near future.
All right. Thanks very much.
Have a good evening.
All right, motion, folks, can I have a motion to the effect to allow the town administrator to work with, if there's, and we'll do a discussion minute, with Blue Planet funding, proposed solar pilot agreement, have the town administrator work with Mr. Funk in signing an agreement that is suitable to all parties.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
And motion's been made, the Reuben Wentworth, to allow the town administrator to work with Mr. Funk of Blue Planet funding on a proposed solar pilot agreement, seconded by Paul Rochelle. We'll open up the floor to discussion.
I have one other question, if Liz could find out, because I just noticed this, that on the tax agreement, the taxes won't start until they get into the commercial setting.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think we should work on that,
So,
because we still should be charging them. If they've got a half a plant running, they should be charging, even though they ain't up to the 3 megs in the commercial setting. But when that project starts, somebody's gonna be paying taxes.
right, and that's when the pilot agreement would go into effect when the project has been completed and they turn it on.
Right, but that's a 2-year, that can be up to a 2-year wait. Somebody should be paying, whether it's the land tax or whatever, somebody should be paying taxes on those 2 years. They shouldn't be able to go the 2-3 years getting this thing set up
Well, there would be
and not
taxes,
pay nothing.
there would be taxes paid on it for 2 years, as an example,
But
while
it's-
they're clearing the land and constructing it, and it would be the current use tax.
Land's all cleared, it's ready to go in.
I've never been there, so.
Right by the beginning.
I
Well,
don't
once
know
they
where the
start-
solar
well, once
array-
By your camel.
Once they start construction on it, it should be coming out of current land use anyways, once they start.
Transition tax year, unless conceded with April 1st, is the first tax year covered by this agreement, which means when they're up and running and get to the commercial
Well,
site.
that's one thing they should be working on.
That's why I'm telling her, if she can work on it.
Ask her, yes.
Ask her,
Mr. Chairman?
yeah.
The way I understand is, he explained, that's why they go to 20 years.
Well, that's,
The 20 years not only for the investment part of it, it's also because of, in lieu of the taxes, the pilot agreement, as it progresses through the 20 years, it starts to catch up and picks up more revenue each and every year from the very beginning. You're making more as the long term goes on.
I got
See, that's what it
I
meant.
got the opposite of that.
No, that's not the way I understood it.
Because
No,
as
because
it
the value
progresses, the value's going down.
The value goes down over the course of the 20 years because of the tax write-off. Again, as it goes through, it goes down, but we're still getting the same amount of money
That's what I'm
as
saying.
we're getting from the first of the thing.
That's right, so it's still gonna increase
Yeah.
as time goes on.
So a motion we made, this discussion, Bill?
I believe I heard him also say it's a federal subsidy, right? I got a problem.
Well, like all businesses though, I mean, we make a capital investment, we get to write it off. Such as me when I bought the store.
This is,
For 20 years of my mortgage, I was able to write off my interest and everything else from my investment. Now that my 20 years is over, I'm paying a lot more money to Uncle Sam now. So just as what he's saying, as it goes down, then we start to pay more revenue.
this was all started back with Bush and Obama and stuff, as they wanted to get more solar.
Well, more renewable energy.
Yeah, renewable energy.
It's kind of like our governor did. Like a year ago, he allowed all the wind plants to stay online and protect all those jobs, and said the power companies will buy the power from at this rate. So
Yeah, God would add a
I
slide.
don't agree with it a whole lot, that businesses are told who they will buy their power from, and they have to reimburse them. Can't say I agree with that, but, Mr. Funk answered some of our questions. I think it's up to us now to allow our town administrator to go to the drawing table with them, go through certain paragraphs of this contract where our attorney, Rob, had problems, and she has problems, and try to work something out in negotiation.
I think we definitely need an attorney anyway, working on our side to finalize any kind of contract.
Mr. Holt?
Yes, I just want to make sure the issue of the 20 years is addressed. We have two officials questioning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more than that.
sure, they-
What is saying, yeah, Rob is saying 10, let's go.
I'm still saying
Yeah,
10.
you're saying 5.
Well, I started low.
I'm saying 10, I'm
Hopefully
saying
maybe-
10 is feasible.
Hopefully, we maybe get somewhere in the middle. So motion made for any further discussion. I'll call the vote, the roll. Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes,
Mr. Rochelle?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. The vote is in the affirmative. Town administrator from Blue Planet Funding to work out an agreement on the contract. At this time, that is it for old business. We'll go to the Selectmen's report. Mr. Holt?
Nothing.
Mr. Whitman? Mr. Rochelle? Mr. McDonald?
No, but I have two things to mention. One is, we gotta start looking at fireworks and stuff, and Memorial Day Parade, what we're gonna do.
That was my next thing to give you a little highlight on.
Okay.
He can
And the other thing is Hamley Park. We're gonna leave that all summer with rocks on the beach?
No? I'll give that to you in her report if she has something. If not, we'll have to have Mr. Roberts next week on thing.
Remind me. Oh, one more thing.
You only said 2.
I know, I got one more thing. The boat launch. Did you see it this week? You can bring a record down and pull the trailer out?
No.
Because at the end of that boat launch, it drops about 3.5 feet.
I did know
Bottomed
that.
It bottomed the triple axle trailer out. They had to bring the ramp truck down and the wrecker, hook a bolt together to get the truck and trailer out. And I think we should see if emergency permit or whatever we need and put some stone at the end of that rampway. Because it's not fair. People use the town ramp and tear the hell, it bent the axles, everything.
We did talk about it last,
I think we
about doing
should,
some repairs on that.
you know, when it reaches out with the excavator, backs the wheeler in there with the excavator, reaches up, put them at the end of the ramp just to fill that hole in with some stones and they stop.
Which boat
Oh,
ramp?
let's stop. They're getting off the agenda here at this time. I'm going into that. So if you want it on the agenda for next week.
I think it should be.
Yes.
You have the boat launch ramp agenda.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna rein it back in. I'm going to my reports. Today, as you know, was the emergency management meeting. There was concerns and questions. Programs, Kelly Trumbull had written in and asked about that. Right now, the emergency management team has decided that everything stays in place until the end of May, to May 30th, with the emergency order. So right now, there are no summer programs going on. But Kelly Trundle did need to know by June 11th, at the latest, whether or not things are going to be not happen this year, such as fireworks, such as summer programs, such as hiring lifeguards, summer camp counselors. So right now, she's holding off. She's waiting to hear from the emergency management team at the end of May. Fireworks have to be canceled 30 days in advance for us to have a full refund. The emergency management team is looking at that right now. They would say they're going to be off because we're going by the governor's orders as of this point to May 30th. Porta potties, right now, we're decided today to have put down at the bay as a start. The beaches have been released to be able to sit on everything now. So you'll be looking at 2 on the men's side, 2 on the women's side, and 2 over by the beach. Each one, there'll be one that will be handicap accessible. The porta potties will be put up towards the stone wall at the west side bathroom, so it blocks that alleyway, so people can't get in behind them. We decided with 2 on each side. Okay? Instead of doing 10 or 20, maybe having them clean a little more once a week.
As we discussed
With
before.
porta potties, you get 1 week cleans. If we bought in 5 or more of them, the cost to have those clean more wasn't cost effective. So what the emergency management team decided, they do 6 of them, have them cleaned twice a week possibly. Okay? Because there was one thing of shutting them off on weekends. This way they'll be able to stay open. The reason we're not opening up the public restrooms was, one is supplies. We've had so much toilet paper stolen out of there. Also getting the cleaning supplies to keep them clean. There was one company we're trying to get a hold of, but most companies are not interested in cleaning the public restrooms during the pandemic. So right now, the porta potties seem like the most feasible way to go.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. Also brought up was Memorial Day Parade. The police chief will be reaching out to the American Legion on it. Right now, as it stands, it would be canceled anyways because of the governor's orders. But he is going to reach out to the American Legion about it. I asked for a couple of days, maybe come up with an idea, but not for a parade and not for service, but something to remember the veterans by at Memorial Day. Maybe a small display down there or something like that. I asked to give me the week and I'd come up with something. So he is going to reach out to American Legion. I did also let Liz know today, Old Riverside Cemetery looks fantastic.
Doesn't it? I want to give a shout out to Jim. It looks beautiful.
It looks beautiful, and I hope that we can keep it looking like that for Memorial Day.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Jim that he did a good job.
So I wanted to let her know that today. I did say that.
I know it's good. I did go by and look great.
Public swim wars will have signs on it that say no lifeguard on duty. That these areas do not meet the COVID-19 CDC requirements for cleaning, because we don't clean the swim areas. Kelly will be taking care of that. The picnic table by the west side restroom that's next to the ladies' room, that will be removed and put back over on the other side of the gazebo.
So we're not, can I ask you something on that, on the dock?
Yes, sir.
We're not going to have the lifeguards on duty,
Right.
but the dock's going to be open. So they're going to be able to use the dock, go swimming
They'll be able to use dock go swimming,
with no lifeguard on duty.
but they go swimming now with no lifeguard on duty.
Then why are we
And
paying
they
for
won't-
lifeguards?
Because it is a safety protocol the town has done over the years. During certain hours, they would have a lifeguard on duty. Right now, there'd be no lifeguard on duty, so after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you could always go swimming with no lifeguard on. It never said at your own risk. But right now, with all the gatherings, you can't have a lifeguard down there and be in PPE to be protected from all that.
Oh, I agree with that.
There was ideas of putting chains across it, but we know, like the picnic tables, you take it off, they're gonna go underneath the,
They're gonna use it anyway.
underneath the chains,
They're gonna
and then
use
they call the police department saying, you need to go down there and do something. Well, we don't have enough resources to sit there and police every
No.
part of that bay, and
Right. And it's
and
only
two
gonna
is,
be museum.
we do not want to revolt on our hands. Because if you take away a 4th of July weekend, or during the week, it's 90 degrees out, the kids are going to want to go swimming. And they'd rather see the kids in the bay than out in the woods or in the pit somewhere partying,
No,
like we used to.
yeah, but they're not going to do the milfoil one. Can we check with them to make sure they're not going to spray as we get into the middle of, last year before, they did it 4th of July, put the signs up around the bay, which was unfair to do.
So as far as the milfoil go, that's a good comment. Liz will have to get in touch with Kelly on that. But I just wanted to let you know what kind of came out of the meeting today. There was no concerns about Major Jesus Valley Road, all Mountain Road this weekend because of the weather helped out a little bit.
Right.
And that's about it. Liz has something else that was in the meeting last week and got brought up again today. She'll have her TA's report coming up for first responders. But I wanted to let you know where that all stood.
I just wanted to make a comment. I'm glad, because I was part of the emergency team on Thursday. I'm glad to see that some of these were addressed, and some of the things that we discussed that went through, and I'm glad that the public restrooms are.
Hopefully, we won't need more than that,
Mhm.
but if we do, it's gonna look like signs. We're gonna have Johnny on the spots everywhere.
Yeah.
No, we don't want, that's not what we're trying to do, but yet enough to accommodate what we have.
We could put up a sign, camera on premises.
We already have a camera on those premises right there.
Yeah, but we could put a decent sign up so they can see it before they sneak around or go. They'll think twice about doing it.
Well, hopefully the porta potties will be placed strategically to block off that back.
If you can find a quick way in, kid.
You can get around. So that's all I wanted to bring up, so I'm gonna move on at
Thank
this
you.
point
And I will,
to the town administrator.
I would like to say that we've been pretty lucky with our emergency management teams.
We've been very lucky.
That's good.
And I just go back to that one spot so we can move on. All expenditures that are due to the COVID-19 is going to go in the emergency management line item. So when you start seeing that get way over expended, don't get nervous. The reason it's going just in there for anything that's bought to do with this, signs, PPE or anything, is so that we can get reimbursed through the CARE Act or from FEMA. So this way here, we don't have to chase it from other departments.
What account is it?
This is one of the other things that is coming out about this, that some of this money is going to have to be affected in our regular budget. That's why we have to go to the department heads to say, what can you do without because of this emergency? So we have the money to pay for it, because the last thing I want to do is have to entertain the thought to sit with the budget committee and ask them to get their permission to use the surplus fund to pay bills.
Well, that, and you gotta figure too, that you're not gonna get all of it, because when they're gonna start fishing through it and looking, saying, yeah, we're gonna pay for this, but we're not gonna pay for that.
So at that point, I'll end my report and turn it over to Liz for her report.
So the FEMA reimbursement, we won't get it this year, but it's up to 75%. The CARES Act under the Gopher Fund is 100% reimbursed, and that's for hazard pay stipends for emergency responders, and that will be reimbursed this year. So what I wanted to talk to you about under my TA report were two things. One I've already talked about earlier about spending freezes. I'll bring information back to you. The second thing was the hazard pay stipends. If you look in the back of your binder, you have some documentation from me under the TA report. There's a cover memo from Laura. I asked her to create. Now, the CARES Act has to do with emergency responders. The proposal in the CARES Act, which is funding that the state has received, is to pay a stipend to the emergency responders. And the stipend is a weekly stipend, and it would be for those who work over 30 hours, it would be $300 a week. For those who work under 30 hours each week, it would be $150. So I asked, so this is something that the board needs to approve or deny. Approve or deny.
There was one other one in there too. If the call firefighter would at least say that he would show up to a fire. The case was, there was also, I believe the fire chief said $50. $50 pay.
If they're on the roster and they're available, yes. If they're on vacation somewhere, then they will not get that weekly stipend. Now, some emergency responders work for multiple municipalities. They are not allowed to get a stipend from each municipality. The employee has to choose which municipality they will receive the stipend from. I can tell you from the manager's listserv so far, I have not heard or seen of any municipality that has denied it, but I'm not saying that to make you think, lean one way or the other. I'm just saying there's been a lot of chatter, and so far it's all in favor of giving these stipends to the emergency responders. So for the town of Alton, a rough calculation, we have approximately 33 firefighters, which would calculate approximately to $3,300 per week out of the budget. There are 17 police who would receive the stipends also. That equates to $4,200 per week. So we're looking at approximately $7,500 per week, which would come out of the budget and be reimbursed by the CARES Act. There's only a certain time frame that you can apply for some of these reimbursements.
They're not paying any of the benefits, taxes, Medicare.
So the reimbursement, so let me just back up a little bit. So those that are full-time, that are in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire retirement system, this stipend does not qualify for the New Hampshire retirement system. So there's no taxation there that we have to worry about. If FICA and Medicare would apply, those taxes are reimbursed by the CARES Act. Yep. Yep.
How long in period before the town gets reimbursed?
2021 to 2022, I believe.
That's a long time.
If I remember reading that last week, right?
I don't recall off the top of my head. There's so many things going on.
It wasn't, I don't believe it was this year. I believe it was 2021 up to 2022.
So there are 3 phases under the CARES Act for the stipend payment for emergency responders. The first phase is March 1st through April 30th. The second one is May 1st through June 30th. The third one is July 1st through August 31st. The money is available now in the state treasury. I guess it's up to the
What
state.
happens if it's not available?
Well, it is available.
By 2021 or 20,
That was for anything that could be paid. I shouldn't just say it to the first responder thing. That could be for anything that could be repaid to the town,
So-
FEMA or anything.
FEMA, we won't see FEMA until 2021 or 2022.
If we're lucky,
okay.
if you're lucky, yeah.
The FEMA won't be, we have to wait until the end of the state of emergency. Once that's over with, then FEMA adds on 2 or 3 months where you can gather up your documents and apply to get up to 75% reimbursement. The CARES Act through Gopher is,
There now.
yes, it's there now in the coffers.
So the question I have to you, if we go along with this improvement, does that still affect our bottom line, or is that going to be paid out of the emergency management fund through that way?
So it's my understanding that the finance manager here will create a new line in the emergency management budget specifically for the stipends, so as not to confuse these stipends with the FEMA reimbursement that we're going to be looking at.
Okay.
FEMA has a minimum that we have to reach. The CARES Act stipends do not qualify for FEMA. That's out of the Gopher Fund. FEMA is a totally separate reimbursement request, which takes a long time, and you can get anywhere from 0 up to 75% of any expense related to the state of emergency.
We're getting 100% of this money back.
But my question is,
Yes,
if we start paying $300 out a week,
yes.
we're going to say the fire department, 1 week it's $3,300. We pay that out. That's going to come out of salaries right off the line, right?
No, that's going to be charged to a new line that Laura
Emergency management.
will create, right?
We still have to pay it somewhere. So it's going to come out of the emergency management, which only has $1,500 left in it.
Which will be overexpended.
Overexpended.
Yep.
But the money's still going to come somewhere. Does this number affect our bottom line, or when we get that money for Concord to pay for this, can we use that money to pay for that?
We can use the reimbursement money to reimburse that line.
Okay, that's all I
Without
want to
going
make
to
sure.
the general fund.
Is this retroactive? Or is it from when the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis? Or is this not?
It started, there's only 3 phases to this stipend thing. It's not going to go on forever and ever
Okay.
during the state of
My
emergency.
next question, how long is it?
The first phase is March 1st through April 30th. So anyone an emergency responder working March 1st through April 30th will, if the board approves, could qualify for a weekly stipend. Now, you know,
Retroactive.
March 1st through April 30th. If they're on vacation or they're sick in the hospital, they're not available, they're not eligible for the stipend.
Only if they work.
But
They
what
have to
about,
be on the roster and they have to be ready to respond to a call.
right, we're done with the first phase. We're already in May.
Right, but what,
But we can apply for it.
right. So we have until, it's either the end of this month, no, it's June 1st. We have until June 1st to submit a request for reimbursement for this stipend, if you approve the stipend. See, everything is done in chunks and
This
phases.
will be the first phase.
Yeah.
And there'd be 1 of 3.
When
Yeah.
did we just got this last week.
Just got it?
This just came in last week through the emergency management,
So we start-
governor's
Yeah.
orders.
We start back paying. When is the last, when does it stop?
August.
August 31st. And then after that deadline, you'll have a certain amount of time to gather all the documentation and submit it for reimbursement.
We don't get reimbursement until August 31st, or we apply for it then.
So whatever we start from the first, putting it in now, the checks will be cut, we'll get reimbursed, that will help replenish up to August, and August should give us back what we initially started, what we expended initially.
So it's a total of 6 months, 2 months, 2 months, and 2 months. Phase 1 is the first 2 months, which is March 1st through April 30th. Phase 2 is the second 2 months, which is May 1st through June 30th. And phase 3 is the last and third phase, which is July 1st through August 31st. Those are the time periods that emergency responders may qualify for these stipends. You have to wait until each phase is completed before the finance manager can gather everything together and submit a reimbursement. So this is going to be going on into the fall and probably late fall and early winter.
So I guess, gentlemen, what I'm looking for is a motion to approve the first responded hazardous pay stipends paid for by the state of New York through the CARES Act for the police department, police officers and the fire personnel, ambulance personnel. I think it's a good thing. I mean, some of you guys still, I know where you work, while you work somewhat in the public. I work in the public every day. It's getting worse dealing with some of the public, not all of them. 95% of my customers are fabulous. There's a few that are coming up from out of state, unfortunately, that are coming in that aren't quite as fabulous. And I found out this weekend by 2 of them. Wasn't happy, but I stuck up for my workers. It's not going to get easier because we're going to have more and more people return in the next 2 weeks. But our first responders are going to have to come in contact with us, the police or the fire, especially the ambulance crew, because they're the ones that really don't know what they're going into if someone isn't registered.
Same with the police.
So same with the police in the stopping, but the police already have an idea because they're trained to keep their distance to them. That's why a lot of times you don't see our officers right now wearing masks, because they're already trained to keep their distance from an individual. Where the fire department has no choice. They have to go in an emergency, go into someone's home. They might not know that has this coronavirus. So I think it's a good thing for them. That way there we keep them on the roster so our ambulance can always run. Because they could also themselves say, you know, I just want to stay at home right now. And we'd be hurting a little bit. So I'm in agreement to this. So, Paul?
Well, I just want to say that I'm for it, but I also feel sorry for a lot of the people in a lot of other businesses that don't get a chance.
Well, actually, retail can't apply for this. Anybody that deals with the public without reading those orders right, they can apply.
All your merchants?
All the merchants, the way I read it, that we could, but it's up to whether or not the state approves it.
Right.
But maybe she can add in.
I can't, I'm not familiar with that facet of it, but I can tell you that President Trump has declared that all public works employees are considered emergency responders. The state of New Hampshire has not yet declared that to be. If and when that does happen in the state, then all of our public works type employees will for this as well.
I can also tell you that I'm going to be getting a $300 a week stipend. It was announced by the governor a few weeks ago. I'm told it will be in my paycheck at the end of this week, retroactive back to when he announced it. It's probably the same act. It probably is, you know, and that's because in the industry that I'm in, any one of us could say, I don't want to take a chance going in there and coming down with this thing.
Right.
You know, any one of us could do that. My assistant at work, her doctor said, I'll write you a note, say that your immune system's down, so so people don't have to go to work in these positions. So yeah, I couldn't vote against this because I'd be a hypocrite because I'm going to be.
All right, so we have no more discussion. How about?
I have one more thing, it's just a little tidbit on this.
Oh, he's the one telling me to move this.
I really think the board should strongly consider starting to wear masks at these meetings, because quite frankly, none of us know where the other one has been and who we have been in contact with. We just don't know because the virus is invisible.
Would you like to sit over there then?
I know where I've been.
Because to be honest, and I understand it. Trust me, I'll take you seriously on that.
It's a scary feeling.
I understand that. I see it every day in my store. Okay, I do understand it. But I will find it hard for me to wear a mask. I just have to tell you that now, but I can move you over there 20 feet away. Because I think the new thing is 15 feet away now. But anyways, thank you, no, but thank you for your concern, I do understand. There's nothing else though, can I have a motion to approve the first responders hazardous pay stipends?
So moved.
Okay, motion's been made to approve the first responders hazardous pay stipends, seconded by Mr. Whitman. Any further discussion?
Yes, Jim,
Yes.
I'm gonna vote for it. Boy, I'm just wondering, where's all this money gonna come from?
Oh,
Gentlemen,
I give it
Coming
that
off the
right.
trees.
That's,
I'm talking the whole scenario. here.
Oh,
The
I
federal
agree.
government.
Keep printing it.
Boy, this all sounds great, motherhood apple
When you
pie.
go to collect at the end, they're gonna say.
This money
something
here,
wrong.
is my understanding, the way I read it right, listening to the governor, this is coming out of the New Hampshire Treasury, which has been setting. So, and if I might be mistaken on it, but I believe they've had this money, some of this money they've been using is coming out of the New Hampshire Treasury that they've had.
Yes, rainy day fund,
So,
that they've been using.
but the other stuff, I don't know where it's coming from, but they just keep printing it.
As far as the federal government.
Any,
just said.
any further discussion? I'll poll the board, Mr. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Whitman,
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes, the vote is in the affirmative.
Thank you, that's all I have.
So this time, I would say we move on to the minutes, but we do not have any minutes.
We do not have any, there's,
We have, one more here.
Next
The
week.
appointment for road fix.
That's all the way down to the bottom. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Thanks, you folks all had a copy of that sitting at the table when you got here this afternoon. Fire department, pay increases that they're due. Just need a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted on May 11th, 2020.
I assume, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
these are scheduled increases.
Yes, sir, because they got their licenses to full
Yeah.
EMT, and basically they finished their schooling.
you'll see the document in the signature file.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written on May 11th, 2020.
Second.
Motion made by Paul Rochelle to approve the consent agenda as presented on May 11, 2020, seconded by Mr. Holt. Any discussion? I'll poll the board. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. The vote is an affirmative. Next, moving on to discretionary action request appointments. Justin Cooper requests to make repairs and maintain a section of Davis Road. He's not asking for an appointment. Mr. Cooper did come see me after he saw Mr. Roberts. You have Mr. Roberts' part in there. I told him what he was sounding me that he didn't really need to come before us to write us a letter of what he wanted to do along his property on Class 6 road. Mr. Roberts did call me this morning, also stated the same fact. I think at the end of it, but he's just requesting, so I'm gonna look at the town administrator, because she's kind of looking at me there, saying that maybe she doesn't agree with me.
I think as with all other people who have requested to do work on a Class 6 road, he does need to attend remotely just to explain to all of you what he's doing, and then he can answer any questions that you may have. Maybe you won't have questions, but I think doing what others have done and others have had to appear, I think it's only fair to be a very brief appointment.
I think, and I understand what you're saying, I think the one reason he did not want to appear, because when we're not having to appear, we'd have to do it on telephone. I think that was the whole reason, just because we're doing everything over a telephone conversation now versus meeting in person. And I think that's what I was leaning to too. But if you folks feel that we need to have him on the phone, by all means.
No. Done this with,
Because he wrote down everything he wants to do, and I talked to Ken.
Yeah.
Ken went out there and looked at it,
Yeah.
what he wants to do and everything. He has no problem with that. As far as Ken signing off on it, that kind of satisfies me to a point. So, yes, sir.
we've had quite a few of these come in front of the planning board and stuff, and we allow them, like Chamberlain Road, they did the whole top of that.
Mhm.
We've done 3 or 4 different ones where we allow them Reed Road, and now the forester uses it for parking for hiking back side onto Mount Major. And that guy that lives at the end of the road fix that road.
Okay, so it's up to you, the board, how you want to do it, but I would just say if we do approve this, that we have Mr. Roberts go out and just inspect it.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. I'd be, as long as it's inspected by Mr. Roberts and it's to our standards and.
Oh, whoa.
No, I'm sorry, not to our standards, but to how it should be done correctly.
Well, it's a class 6 road.
All right, not to our standards. I didn't mean it like that. I meant to say that it's done properly.
According to the standards he's saying he's going to do
Right.
it. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, because it's a class 6 road. It's not town maintained.
I understand that, Ken.
All right.
Virgil, I'm just saying that it's done correctly.
You just
I misspoke. I meant as long as it's done correctly.
I have a motion or any more discussion on this?
I move we approve the request.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Holt to approve Justin Cooper's request pending Mr. Roberts' inspections.
Yes, sir.
Pending Mr. Roberts' inspection. I had a second by Virgil McDonald.
Yes.
Any further discussion? I'll poll the board. Mr. Rochelle.
Yes.
Mr. Whitman.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mr. Holt.
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth, yes. The vote is in the affirmative, 2 ayes. There is no non-public session tonight. Gentlemen, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the May 11th meeting at 7:49.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Good word, nobody wants to go home. Motion made and adjourned by Reuben Wentworth, second by Mr. Holt. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, I'll poll the board. Mr. Holt? Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald? Mr. Wentworth, yes. Vote is affirmed.